common mistake that many people make when they're negotiating is to underestimate the power of preconditioning. And preconditioning is used based on the assumption that you're going to meet some resistance from the other party in you getting what you want to get from the negotiation. So preconditioning is what can you do now to minimize that anticipated resistance which you're likely to meet. The thing I'd like you to be aware of is that when people receive bad news or just something that they don't like, they tend to go through a range of emotions. Now this might be really bad news in your private life, or it might just be within a negotiation when the other party wants to change something which you'd rather keep as it is. And when that happens, when people receive bad news or unwanted news, the first thing is, well, it could be as strong as shock. And once the shock has subsided, it could be denial, it's just not happening, whatever it may be. And then you may go through a process of, well, even of anger. How can they do this to me? And once those very negative reactions have died down and subsided, what tends to happen is that people reach a process not necessarily of acceptance, but they start to think, well, if this is going to happen, what do I need to do to change? How can I accommodate this thing which I still don't really want, but it may happen? That's where you want people to be when you're negotiating with them. So how can you precondition to get rid of all those other emotions before you get to that stage? So that's what preconditioning does. So it could be an email that you send, a phone call. In other words, another method of communication before you get to the negotiation stage. You don't want them still at that stage of shock or anger or denial when you sit down with them to get what it is that you want to get from it. Now we, as consumers and customers, are preconditioned all of the time without necessarily recognizing that it's happening, and I want you to be aware of it and recognize it when it does happen. So a couple of examples of it, and the first is, well, on the basis that more people are borrowers than lenders, well, that means that a rise in interest rates is bad news. And in the old days, the Bank of England here, what they would do is rise interest rates and let us know on the very day that it was happening. And even though there was nothing we could do about it, it didn't feel good. They've recently got wise to the idea of preconditioning, and what happens now is they tell us in advance, not just when it's going to happen, but some of the triggers that will take place before the rise in interest even takes place. And what that means is that when it does happen, well, we were expecting it. It's not such a surprise. It's not such bad news anymore. Even if we don't like it, we're ready. We've been preconditioned. In the same way, before petrol prices go up at the pumps, we've been preconditioned. We know to expect it. It's going to happen sometime soon, maybe because of something that's happened in the Middle East, or some of the natural disasters which have happened more recently around the Gulf of Mexico, affecting the oil trade in Texas, so that we know when those petrol prices do go up, well, we were expecting it. It doesn't feel quite so bad. So I'd like you to recognize when it's happening to you and don't let it happen to you. I'd like you to play around with trying to use preconditioning. Just see how much easier it makes the negotiation itself.